Hello, and thank you for watching this short film. It was made by a group of people in the West London Cancer Network, some healthcare professionals, some patients, some carers, but all with a personal involvement in cancer. It was their idea to perk up the debate on user involvement in the NHS Cancer Service. So what is user involvement? Oh, well, there's the question. It's a concept the NHS is keen to encourage, but there's a lot of doubt as to what it actually means. A user is just a service user, a patient who's using cancer services. Or it could be someone caring for that patient, a friend or a relative perhaps. And user involvement? Why should patients and carers get involved in cancer services? What can they do? Well, in this film, we set out to explore some of the misconceptions surrounding user involvement, as well as some of the possibilities. We've set up some scenes where we've asked healthcare professionals to play the part of users, and vice versa. As you'll see, there's a great deal of enthusiasm for the idea, and an ever-evolving network of partnerships is developing, with some successful outcomes.
And this last group, you've got a day center, can't you see I'm busy, and it's a listen to users group on Tuesday joke. Again, you can either directly take that scenario if you want to, or just take a spin-off from what it suggests. I think what I'm trying to encourage you to do is use this as a trigger rather than slavishly follow it. Okay?
And that one easy to do. Would you mind choosing one of those two? Then you have the casting vote.
Oh God,
you know, and the thing is also you're still pursuing in English instead of thinking, right, you know, I don't,
exactly.
You know, you're still trying to help, but in English.
With do what you want, but I need it off the bed.
You want to be confident that she's given a well-informed consent.
You know, I'm all for this patient care business. I'm all for like, let's consult, let's chit chat, let's go do alternate medicine. But the bed, there are other people waiting who know that they need help from the NHS, so we can do the operation. There's not much I can do. She wants to drink tea, let her go and do it, but not on my bed. All right.
The main advantages of user involvement is that you're able to get a really unique, rich source of information from the patients who've had the experience within the hospital, and it's more informative than just a patient satisfaction questionnaire, for example. I think the other big advantage is that you can actually run ideas or projects past the patients before you actually put them into clinical practice, to give a real sense of whether it's actually going to work and to get their view on that.
One of the difficulties with user involvement is that people sometimes have fixed preconceptions about what the patient or carer can offer. But as this role play shows, where there's a will, there's always a way to move forward.
For this next part of the role play session, I want to introduce the idea of sashes to identify who you are. So if you're wearing a red sash, you're a healthcare professional. If you're wearing a yellow sash, you're a user.
We can't really communicate. She speaks Portuguese and I...
Português, sim, eu falo português.
Could you please try and find out what she's here for? Because unfortunately we have a temporary file and it doesn't really say anything in it.
I'll try.
Sim,
Hello?
Sim, falo português,
Hello.
senhora. Sim, so olá.
Yeah,
Sim.
okay. Are you here because of your stomach? I saw you the other week. Your stomach, you're here?
Aqui, sim, muitos problemas.
Okay.
Aqui.
You're better now. You're a little bit better now, though. You look better.
Sim? No compreendo.
Have you got your pills with you?
Pills?
Have you got your pills with you?
How are
Your
we supposed
pills!
Desculpa. Oh, não, estás em casa. Eu já esqueci.
Yeah, okay.
Listen, we need to figure out a way of working.
Sim, português.
Have you got anyone with you? Have you got someone with you outside?
Afora? Não, estou aqui, sozinha.
Parlez-vous français?
Oui, je parle. Oui. Je suis ici. Si. Oui, pas problème, si.
Okay, don't do any more.
Using this
as a metaphor for patient engagement and involvement, because we were saying in our discussion that even in, to try and engage the public, actually, if we're not speaking the same language and we're not understanding or hearing each other, then we're not going to engage anyone. And although this is a clinical situation, the same could be used when we're talking about public involvement.
If I was chatting to a consultant colleague about patient-user involvement in my service, then if I came up against the argument that there wasn't enough time, well, I would argue that actually it's probably the most important time that you have with a patient. Many a patient has complained that their consultant hasn't had enough time for their views and opinions. And the knock-on effect of that is, of course, that their reputation potentially will not be very good. And secondly, if they don't listen, they'll never be able to progress their practice and their service to patients.
User involvement no doubt does take quite a lot of time and resource, but I see it now as part of everyday working life. It's a different cultural mindset to think about, really, so that everyday practice has to be about what would the patients think about this, or everything we do we have to run through the user group now, because it just gives a different perspective that we didn't have before.
We could probably send the survey out in the post to the patient, or maybe phone them up. But I don't think it's very wise, to set up a meeting or a place for them to come, because I think it's too much to ask them for, to be honest. I don't think, why should they do that in their free time, for some of the people, it's quite far to travel. Sure. So I think maybe call them up, or...
I think posting it out is a better idea, because, if we are going to have data, we want it to be qualitative, and maybe there'll be more time for reflection.
As I've said, most people are enthusiastic about user involvement, even if they don't necessarily agree on how to go about it. But the point is that user involvement is really a means to an end, and that end is improving cancer services. The bad news is that more and more people are getting cancer nowadays. The good news is that more and more people are surviving it. So we've got this huge resource, this great fount of knowledge, goodwill and experience that the NHS professionals can use. After all, we all have exactly the same objective, and that objective is improving the experience of cancer for those who go after us. So talk to your colleagues about how you can get service users involved in your plans. There are people across health and social care who can help you to get started.
I personally get out of this a feeling of self-worth, an increase in my own self-confidence, but hopefully a feeling that I'm contributing in some way to help patients who follow in the footsteps of my mother and father.